So this morning we've got Trevor Gregory in the hot seat. And Trevor is an expert on social enterprise because he set up a phenomenal initiative in Ghana. And I'm going to hand you over to him so he can explain exactly what he's done. And then we'll ask him some questions. Good morning, Trevor. Welcome.
Morning, Melinda. It's good to be with you. Yeah, we have actually set up a complete value chain based beginning out in Ghana, where we now have 5 cooperatives, 3 that we've helped to establish,
5,
and 2 others that have joined us.
Wow.
About a year ago, we received organic certification for the shea butter that they're producing. We're working in the northern part of Ghana, in the Upper East region, which is about an hour south of Burkina Faso. What they do is they gather wild growing shea nuts, turn it into shea butter. Some of that is brought over to Scotland, where we're running an employability program for recovering addicts and ex-offenders. They make our skincare products, and then when skincare products are sold, part of our profit is returned to Ghana, where we're building schools, clinics, and mortuaries in the local communities where everything started. What we've done is we've now got something like 3,200 women working with us.
How many? How many was that? It's telling me my internet connection's unstable. Okay, yeah. Go on. How many?
We've got around about 3,200 women involved in the cooperatives. Right. Now, some of them would be literally going out into the bush and collecting the shea nuts that grow wild. Others will be processing the nut, the fruit and the nut, and others will be then turning it into shea butter.
Wow. Wow.
So each is paid a living wage.
Right. Does that work on the fair trade? Is that overseen by the fair trade standards?
We haven't actually gone for fair trade certification. We follow them, but they wanted so much money to get the certification that we decided at that time not to do it. Right. We are governed by the World Fair Trade Organization and also through the British Fair Trade Organization, BAFS.
Right. Okay. So Trevor, tell me what if somebody wanted to set up a social enterprise, what would be the very first steps they should take? You know, a lot of people I know that I come into contact with have this as a dream, but the whole prospect appears to be so overwhelming that it just doesn't happen. So what were the first things that you did?
I think first of all, we identified a need. I was out in Ghana and there was a need in a local school. It had been receiving funding for outside from the UK, and that funding was about to stop. And as a result, the school had to decide what we were going to do. I was of the opinion that rather than just giving someone money or a group of people money, actually see what's available in their local economy to actually generate finances from within by trading outside. And that's really where we started. I was over there to give some bad news to this school that they lost the funding. At the same time, I was watching over the shoulders of the school leaders and the village elders. I was watching streams of women carrying shea nuts to market, and I just went down and started talking to them. So I think the first thing is to identify the need and then find a creative way of actually supplying that need, of meeting that need. So as far as social enterprise is concerned, there are different ways that you can do that. You can trade normally, like any other business, and say a percentage of my profits, 10% or whatever, will go to X, Y, or Z. Or another way that you can do social enterprise is to say, actually, which is how we define ourselves as a social business, because the way in which we operate and the people that are involved with us, we are trying to bring together and help them. So whether it's the women out in Ghana or the rehabilitated addicts and ex-offenders over here, we've created this chain where these 2 groups are now working together, supporting each other, and so on. So there are different levels that you can approach it.
Okay, so Trevor, if you wanted to set up, because to me, the issue isn't, we identify the need, and a lot of the women I know that are listening have access to shea butter communities, shea communities. But to me, the big challenge was setting up the would be setting up the infrastructure on the ground so that you can actually communicate and retain some control, and knowing that you've got the right people in place.
That takes time, and you make more mistakes, or I have anyway, than actually. I mean, we've been doing this. We started in Ghana in 2008. Our first 2 years were an absolute disaster. We had the wrong people in place, and so on. Because one of the things I was determined was that I didn't want a white man or a Westerner out in Ghana, because immediately it cost.
I've experienced that. Really bad news. Really bad news. It's got to be from the ground, hasn't it?
It's got to be from the ground. And so one of the mantras that we went in with right from the beginning was, if you don't trade, there's no pay. All right. And therefore, the onus, the responsibility, we need to give back. We're not going in there with pocketfuls of money that's never ending. And I think that's one of the problems that I see, is that people go in with money and they just keep pouring money in, and people think, there is in some places across Africa and Asia, there is an attitude of, here come the charities, the NGOs, we don't need to do anything.
Yes.
And what we did was, we didn't set up as an NGO or a charity out there. We set up as a limited company in Ghana. And what we did do is we built into our articles of association, we built into all of the social good that we wanted to do. And then we went in and said, as I say with this mantra, if you don't work, if we don't trade, nobody gets paid. And in the first 2 years, we had a bit of a disaster. But we kept saying this, and eventually people got hold of it and thinking, actually, unless we improve our quality, unless I do X, Y, Z, this isn't going to be a success. If it's not a success, I'm not getting paid, because there isn't money there just for me.
Right. So when you took on somebody, presumably you've got a key person there managing the project on the ground.
Yeah.
Was he on the payroll? How was he funded?
For the first couple of years, yes, he was funded. And we just paid him bare minimum. And again, we said, that any money that we put in from here is a loan. So when as it gets established, it has to be paid back. What we've done in actual fact is we recycle loans. So all the money was originally given to us. We then lend it out into Ghana. It's used for whatever purposes that together we decide it should be used for. Then it's paid back, and then it's recycled into another. So it's continually being recycled.
So they're also learning entrepreneurship through that attitude.
Yes, they are. Yes, they are.
Yeah.
Because there's no free breakfast. There's no free ride in what we're trying to do. And again, it puts more and more responsibility onto the people that we're working with. And so for the first couple of years, yes, our country director was funded from him. And we called it.
Sorry, we're breaking up. I hope we can get back. Talk again.
Okay.
Go on. So
for the first couple of years out in Ghana, Thompson was paid from here. It was part of we called it startup costs. It amounted to X amount of money in order that he could function into what he do until we'd actually got established. But it was done as a loan, which was then paid back through the workings and through what was going on.
Okay. How much did you start within the pot financially?
We started with £25,000.
Right. And where was that? Because Trade Right International, you're working through Trade Right International, which is, so you had an umbrella body that was funding this.
Yeah, what we did was in 2008, I just went to some friends and said, I've got this idea about collecting setting up a shea nut trading company, social enterprise in Ghana. What do you think? And over a space of 2 or 3 weeks, I was given and loaned up to £25,000, which we took out. And out of that is we established the logistics, because we're working right in the north. So there's logistics of bringing things down to the south, trading, buying, purchasing shea nuts and so forth.
Okay, so for somebody that was thinking, I mean, 25 grand is not a huge amount of money to raise to set up an enterprise like that. But for somebody that was thinking of starting from scratch, presumably these days they could look at crowdfunding to raise that money?
Yes, I mean, we recently ran a crowdfunding which actually was quite successful. I think that it's a really good way of doing that.
Right. What about government support and other, I mean, these are my experience, because as you know, I've also done various projects in Africa, but my experience is they're teeming with NGOs that don't seem to be doing very much. Well, it's teeming with consultants like me, it's,
yeah.
I wonder how they would, if you go to them with a really good business plan. I mean, these things have to be treated as commercial projects, not
Absolutely.
as passionate. I think that's the mistake a lot of people make, isn't it? They go into this with bleeding hearts, thinking I want to help everybody,
yeah.
but they don't have a commercial model that will actually work.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a lesson that some of you will know that I've also quite closely linked to AfriKids, which is an interesting charity because that works very much on a commercial basis. So presumably you had the commercial skills to put this in place. You were the bad boy, good policeman, bad policeman.
Yeah, I mean, yes. I guess I was. I think there is statutory government funding out there. The problem that I see is one is accessing it, and the time that it takes to access it.
Right.
If you're going for government funding, DFID, USAID, or whatever, it could take 2 or 3 years before you actually see anything.
Right. What was the burn rate on that 25K? How long did it take you to get through it?
That took us 6 months, because what we were doing, at least 20K of it was actually physically buying shea nuts.
Right.
So 20,000 went on stock, if you like.
From the women's cooperatives?
Yeah.
That's a lot of money for that.
It is. It was a lot of shea nuts. We had a contract. We had a contract with an exporter, a processor in the south.
Right.
I mean, this is 2008, and they were prepared to buy any shea nut that we could get our hands on in the north.
Right.
And so,
I mean, that's another important point. You start off sourcing where you're going to sell it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
We at the time when we started, because we didn't think we were going to get into skincare products. That wasn't on the horizon until 2010. In 2008, 2009, our sole focus was on trading shea nuts within Ghana.
Right.
And establishing a supply chain there. When the financial crash happened, the global crash, the shea market didn't open. And we'd been trading, and we'd spent 20 grand on shea nuts. Suddenly the market didn't open. We were literally loading 6 articulated lorries of £20,000 worth of shea nuts, which by the time we got down to Accra, which is about 24 hours away, when we sold them, would be worth around about £75,000 to £80,000.
Right.
We got a phone call about a week before, as we were loading the lorries up from the company that we had a contract with, that the market wasn't opening and they didn't want our shea nuts.
Gosh.
So we had to stop everything. Fortunately, the following year, the market did open, and we were able to sell the nuts that we had and recoup the £20,000 that we'd spent.
Right.
So in our first 12, 18 months, we didn't make any money, but we didn't lose any money.
Right. Okay. So what were the biggest challenges when you decided to start manufacturing in the UK? What were the biggest challenges in terms of quality control of the butter and getting it over and doing it in a timely fashion? It's seasonal, isn't it?
It can be seasonal. I mean, the tree harvests for 7 months of the year.
Mm-hmm.
We're now almost at a place where all of our cooperatives are producing butter all the year round.
Right.
But at the beginning, when we started, the country director that we have, Thompson, is brilliant at quality control.
Yeah.
We have a system where we grade. There are grades of shea butter which are now recognised by the Global Shea Alliance, and but we actually began grading before they even were looking at it. And so we started grading our shea butter, because some shea butter comes out green, some of it comes out like a pale muddy colour. Other it's white, other it's generally it's creamy, and the smell can vary from a manure to something really quite like a chocolate.
Right.
And so what we did was we were first of all grading our shea nuts, and we trained various people in how to grade shea nuts. We then were began grading our shea butter. The green stuff is you can
put it in soap.
Good for saponification. So therefore, it's not very good grade stuff, but it's still it's good. If you don't use the green stuff or the brown stuff into a barn, because it just sort of like putting manure on your face.
Right. Face packs.
Sorry.
Face packs.
Yeah, absolutely. And so what we've done out in Ghana is we grade up every box of shea nuts, but it starts by grading the nuts.
So when we talk about refined shea, what sort of process does that go through? A process beyond just grading?
Yes, it has. There's various things that you can do with shea, and it's getting more complicated as technology improves. One thing that you can do with shea is you can what they call fractionate it, and then you get 4 fats out of your shea butter. You can get stearin, which is can be used in candles. You can get pure shea butter, which is generally used in the food industry and chocolate. There's latex, which is used as a biofuel. And there's also something called cocoa butter substitute, which is also used in chocolate.
Chocolate.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you can fractionate it, and in Europe there are 2 countries that are fractionating shea butter. One is in Holland, and the other one is in Denmark.
Right. So presumably that's massive equipment.
That's beyond. I mean, to set up a fractionator would cost you a few £1 million.
Right. Okay.
Right?
So we're not going to do that, ladies.
No, we're not going to. Don't go there. The problem with fractionated shea butter is it breaks down all the minerals and all the vitamins. So although you may be left with what they call pure shea butter, it's just there's very little. You don't know what's in it because of the way it's been broken down.
Right. I see.
Right. There is another way of most today. What we call refined shea butter has been steamed.
Right.
And that's an easier process. It literally goes through a distillation sort of steam process.
Right.
And that takes away the odor.
Right. That's interesting.
Right. The other thing that you've got to bear in mind is there are 2 types of shea butter right from the beginning. There's East African, which is soft, which is quite often we call it shea oil.
Right.
And then there's the West African, which is a harder, it's more like a lard or a butter, a real butter. It's both from the same tree. It's just a slightly different strain of the same plant.
Oh, that's interesting, because
one is soft. Yeah. One has got a lower melting point than the other one.
Right, because I've used shea oil in creams and lotions, and it's beautiful. But I didn't realise that it was. It's
East African. It will probably be East African.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. So it's. I mean, across Africa, you've got 22 countries where it grows, and 900 million trees.
Right.
45% are harvested.
Right. So what about shelf life? I mean, how long can you expect to, if you've got a big consignment, you've got to shift it.
Right. Good shea butter can last 3 years. If it's green, what we call green shea butter, I wouldn't put it longer than 18 months.
Okay.
All of the quality of the shea is all dependent on the nut, on how the nut's been processed, on how the nut has been dried, how the nut has been stored, and how soon it's been used. We're trying to get to a stage where we're only using that year's nuts in our butter.
Right. So I get ideas dropping at me from the sky while I'm talking to people. It just occurs to me, I mean, a lot of the people listening, I'm sure, when they think about social, they're thinking, how can we help? And they're not going to be able, or just certainly willing, but not able to set up their own projects in Africa. I know that there are some that are, but there are going to be a lot that just want to find a way of giving back.
Yeah.
Are there any sponsorship programs for cooperatives that they could actually give to, so that they could take a part of their profits and sponsor a cooperative? I think I might have just started another business initiative here.
I think you may have. I can't think of any.
Right, all right, let's put that on the list. Because it would be great if there was a central bank that that women could pay into, or that companies could pay into, that would actually sponsor an enterprise, and then they could use the enterprise as part of their marketing or whatever.
I think some of that may be Triodos Bank. I think do some of that. Of
course, Triodos. So Triodos is a fair trade bank that put their profits back into.
Yeah.
I don't know what the direct definition is, but Triodos is a really good fair trade bank that like to support these kind of products. So look at them if you're looking at funding. What about other ways that would fall under the umbrella of social enterprise? I mean, do you think the best way is simply to give a percentage of your? Somebody's asked the question that they've been told that they shouldn't try and help others until they can feed themselves, which is absolutely right. Nobody wants to get charity from a beggar. I mean, this is. I think that's an old African proverb, actually. Get rich yourself before you give.
I'm not too sure on that one. I think it has to be within who you are and your DNA of your company.
Right.
In many cultures and in quite a few religions, there is this idea of giving even when you don't have. Give a little of something, 10% or whatever of what you do have. And I think building that in, even when you have nothing, personally is a really quite important principle.
Actually, that's really interesting, because I shared that view for most of my life. And I recently went on a program that taught me that if I focused on making money myself, I would then have the freedom to give in a much more effective way and have control over what I was giving and where. So I suppose there's lots of ways of looking at this.
Yes, yeah.
But yes, I get you. I mean, but I have a problem where people often just want to do good and they're not equipped.
Absolutely. I think you're right. I think what we have to do, and I can see this happening, social enterprise over and above the charity sector. Social enterprise there is a strong drive within social enterprise companies, no matter where they're, in what sector that they're in, for quality of production, quality of product, quality of packaging. Everything about them is quality. Yeah. And whereas I think there is still this mindset within the charity sector, oh, it's all right, it's charity, we can do the second rate.
Yeah.
And it's okay, we will buy into it because it's charity and we're expecting it to be second rate.
Yeah.
And I think that's a big as well differential between the charity sector and the social enterprise sector, because within the social enterprise sector we're saying we don't want favors, we don't want charities, we actually just want to be understood. It's interesting, recently we were awarded a place on the Asda Social Academy, one of the top 12 social enterprises in Scotland to go onto it, and to begin discussions with Asda of getting our products onto Asda shelves. Most of the week that we were there down at Asda, and they were showing us how wonderful they were, was about re-educating Asda people on what is a social enterprise. And I kept saying throughout the week, we're not after favors. We're not wanting to be in because of what we are. We're wanting you to understand how we operate, what we're doing, why we're doing what we're doing, and look at our products in a commercial way alongside every other brand. We're not after favors, we're after understanding. And I think that's a very, very important thing that we need to take on board.
When you say you're after, doesn't being after understanding imply that you want a special deal?
No, not necessarily. We're wanting to understand how we operate.
For promotional, so that they can promote it honestly.
Basically, most multiples are looking for a way in which to attract the ethical buyer.
Yeah.
And what we therefore have to do as social enterprises is get our social story across as well as our product.
Yeah.
And that's really where we're saying we want understanding of what we're doing, how we do, and how we're doing it, so that you can understand it and therefore promote it. Because that you see that's a whole area of your business that you're wanting to attract more customers into.
Right, absolutely. Yeah. And what about, so again, let's say that somebody is in a position to put together a cooperative of women to gather the nuts, or, they don't have the power or the possibility of doing what you've done, which is absolutely phenomenal. And you've taken on the whole ball game here.
Yeah.
Right from the nuts up.
Yeah. Yeah.
Excuse my language. So if somebody, for example, has access to women that can collect them, could set up a community, would you recommend that they perhaps subcontracted out the production? Or, do you think you were forced into creating Carishea because of this glut of nuts, which is probably a blessing in disguise.
Yes, yes.
But is that the way that they should go? Do you think that's the way they should go? Do you think they can make product on the ground, or?
The voice of experience. Break it down into manageable chunks and don't try and fix the world in one go. Yeah. And I think that's basically what we tried to do.
Right. Yes.
Yes. I think, yes.
How do you eat an elephant? How do you eat an African elephant?
Exactly.
Bite.
Choose where. I think the important issue is choose where you're wanting to help. So are you wanting to, for example, are you wanting to build relationship with a community, a cooperative of women producing shea butter, and that you then bring a little bit of that over and you produce your products here? Or are you wanting to somewhere along that line, along that value chain, you decide where you're going to do your social good? Okay. What we've created is something that is doing social good along the whole spectrum, but it's fraught with dangers. It's incredibly frustrating to keep going. And my Denise and my, our scars say, if we'd have just focused in on this part, we would have been better. But we've now created this mammoth, and we're beginning to see it work.
So how many people are there on the ground managing the project now?
We have, we've got, each cooperative has got a committee, and then managing the cooperatives, we've got one person in Ghana.
Right. Okay.
And through him, we organize, we say, right, we've got this order, we've got this 18 tons, 20 tons, whatever, needs to go to South Africa, needs to go to India, needs to go to the US, or whatever. It needs to be organic. So he then organizes which cooperatives are going to do what, and the whole logistics of it.
Okay. That is extraordinary. So Trevor, you're actually selling shea butter as well as, does that go under the Carishea label or the Trade Right label?
It goes under the Trade Right label. What we do is, yes, we generally, there's different ways that we do it. One way that we try and sponsor the container coming in. Basically, if we can bring in 18 tons, which is a full container, it works out an awful lot cheaper than bringing in 10 tons, because you're still bringing it. It costs exactly the same to transport it in the same container, in a 20-foot container. So if we can fill it, it means everything works out an awful lot cheaper. So, but at the moment, we're not at a capacity where we're needing to use 18 tons of shea butter. So one of the things that we do is we say to people, work out how much you're going to use a year. If you're wanting to buy into this container,
forward buy.
Yeah, and forward buy, and bring it all forward that way.
Mm. And at what point would they have to pay for it? They make a commitment.
They make a commitment.
X amount.
As soon as we've got, we work out, let's say we need 10 tons, therefore we need to fill and get another 10 tons. As soon as we've got the full container, that's when they pay.
Okay. And are they getting a preferential price by doing it that way?
Yes, they are.
So that's a real win-win situation for everybody. And it's possibly something that they could use in terms of their marketing, that they're sponsoring a container, sponsoring a cooperative by forward buying a container, by pre-buying the harvest.
Yes.
I mean, forget the van, but they're actually pre-buying the harvest. That is actually a possible sponsorship.
It is, yes.
Scenario. Yeah. But it could be actually framed like, it's more attractive to frame it like that from your point. I'm coaching you here. No, to frame it like that, because people can see these women making the shea nuts is much sexier than seeing a van.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, we do exactly the same, because one of the things that we do here in Scotland is we contract manufacture for brands, for small brands, for people starting up and so forth. And we say to them when they come to us, we've got this story behind what we do. If we contract manufacture for you, it becomes your story. So take it and use it however you're wanting to.
Yeah, so they're not obliged. Look, in the real world, and as you know, we've had long discussions about this. The end consumer can be, again, we're talking, sorry, I have to put my marketing hat here rather than my compassionate hat, but there are end users that resist wanting to help ex-cons or lifers or whatever, but they don't have to use that part of the story in their marketing, do they?
No. In actual fact, in our marketing, to be honest, we don't talk about recovering addicts and ex-offenders. We just say socially excluded people in Scotland, because we know the rankles go up as soon as you start.
I mean, it's interesting. It's kind of sad that, when you're looking at marketing to people, you often have to miss out this. We had an issue when I was working in South Africa on a project that employed people whose families were impacted with HIV. But as we realized very early on that as soon as the word HIV came up, there was huge resistance to getting support, because people just, especially when it comes to beauty products, people just, and even though none of the guys had HIV, they were just supporting families. There was a huge resistance. So it's a similar. It is. And I think we have to be grown up. I think with any social enterprise thing, we have to be grown up and understand what the masses will accept and what they find difficult to accept. We mustn't shoot ourselves in the foot.
Yes,
as long as
absolutely.
we're doing good, that's the important thing.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Oh, absolutely.
yeah, yeah. Okay, well, that is so hugely helpful. I'm sure that a lot of the people listening would have got masses from that. So if they wanted to buy shea butter from you, they can contact you. I'll put the website link on after the interview, but they can contact you at Carishea or at TradeRight?
Either. It doesn't matter. Yeah.
Okay. Now, some time ago, you were also doing coconut oil.
Yes. Yes.
Is that?
We're still not convinced on the quality of West African coconut.
Okay.
Most coconut on the market today is from the Philippines and from Asia,
right?
Where they sun dry the nut before they extract the oil. In Ghana and West Africa, at least, they roast it over charcoal. So the coconut is absolutely fantastic, the coconut oil. The problem is, as soon as you start to melt it, you don't get the coconut aroma straight away. It's like a chip fat.
Right, lovely.
And you get this.
Lovely.
And that lasts for about 10, 15 minutes, and then comes out the coconut smell.
Right. But it's okay in soap, presumably.
It's fine. If it's going to be saponified, it's fine. Yeah. But what we were finding was we were having to literally temper it for about 15, 20 minutes if we were to use it into a balm or something like that.
Right.
And it was variable. The quality of it was variable. And it is all down to the way in which they process it.
Right. So do you sell, if people weren't in a position to fund in advance, forward buy, do you sell various grades of shea butter, or is it just one grade?
At the moment, it's just one. It depends what we've got in at the time and where our stocks are at. But generally speaking, it's going to be one grade.
Which grade would that be?
It's a creamy shea butter, a slight aroma but not a strong aroma, and it's what they call unrefined. It's the highest grade of unrefined. Okay. And over the next year, I think we will be going almost exclusively to it being organically certified. Okay,
brilliant. Trevor, you've done a fabulous job. I mean, I absolutely applaud you in all this, and more power to you, more power to you. And you're looking at other projects. I know you were looking at other countries a while back, weren't you? Or other regions?
We're keep wondering about coconut, that we were offered a coconut project, a plan to set up a coconut in Liberia. So we're thinking about doing that. There are other things that we could be doing as well in Ghana, further south. So we're looking at what oils, good skincare oils we could do. Perhaps neem is one of the things that we begin to look at, which is incredibly popular. Palm as well, West African palm. There's very little West African palm actually on the UK market. It's nearly all from Asia. And I know some people, when you start talking about palm, oh, you can't use palm, you can't use palm. You know, the issue is African palm is where it all started. African palm is sustainable, is really good quality, but at the moment there is very little on the market because of some of the access to it. And also, one of the things that we keep looking at is how much are we draining and taking out of the local economy. Palm oil is very, very popular within the Ghanaian economy.
Right.
People will cook first with palm oil, then with shea butter.
Right. So if you started exporting it, it becomes higher priced on the local market.
Exactly. That's one of the things that we want to keep looking at is what are we doing? Whatever we do, how are we impacting, for positive or negative, the local economy?
And one of the things that absolutely shocked me in South Africa was it's a huge botanical resource for essential oils, just fantastic.
Yeah.
All the essential oils we could access had been sent to Europe or America for refining and then returned to South Africa at double the price. You couldn't buy it on the local market. It was really restricted.
No. I mean, this is one of the issues. why we actually make our products here and not in Ghana is because of the quality, the consistent quality of essential oils, local essential oils isn't there.
Yeah.
And it would take a lot of investment to get it to that point.
What about corruption? Because we met a lot of corruption in South Africa in shipping, in deliveries not being up to scratch, all sorts of things.
Yeah.
Have you had a fight with that? Have you had a battle with that?
Yeah. Oh, yes. Many.
Yeah.
What we've done is at the moment, we have found a really good shipping agent who is based over here. And therefore, we pay him and he takes care of everything else because he's got an office out there. And that we've noticed, as soon as we tried to do something ourselves, we were running into hundreds of pounds worth of corruption to get goods through the port. But as soon as we went to this guy, we're paying less, and it's regulated. We know where it is because he knows where it is, and so on. And I think that's one of the things is don't reinvent the wheel, but find a good on bringing things in and out. Find a good shipping agent in this country that you can build a relationship with, and that has good, positive local links in the country that you're dealing with.
I mean, also on the ground, I remember issues in Tanzania where the woman entrepreneur I was working with set up a lovely workshop and employed a gang of women to make her products for her and wanted to provide them with lunch.
Yeah.
And initially she did it herself, and then she trusted one of her managers by giving her money to buy the food for lunch and to make the lunch. And this was fine. And then in a very short time, she realized that the lunches were getting smaller and smaller. And the woman was actually taking the money.
Yeah.
You know, these are sort of heartbreaking scenarios where you have to be tough.
Yes.
So she actually stopped the lunches.
Yeah.
I mean, but it's just really, I think anybody that's thinking of taking on an enterprise that has to realize that it's a really fine balance between teaching a hard lesson and teaching and being helpful, being really helpful. Is this something you've experienced?
It is. Oh, yes. I mean, one of the things that we've done, our country director highly recommended, strongly recommended, that within the cooperatives, there was 2 of everything on the committee. So we've got a president and a vice president, a treasurer and a vice treasurer, a secretary and a vice secretary, and so on. And we just thought this was overload, and he said, no, because that way they're watching each other and that reduces corruption.
I know, you have to, yeah.
And things like that, okay? The other thing that we do is, because of the wonders of the internet, we can watch what's happening in the Ghanaian bank from here or from anywhere in the world.
Wow.
We have a system within the Ghanaian bank system where they need a signature from here to release any funding over a certain amount. So we put in checks and balances as much as we can. Yeah. But to be honest,
you have to write off a percentage every year, I suppose.
You do. You do.
You've got to be pragmatic.
Yeah. It's going to happen.
Yeah.
And you can either say, I don't want anything to do with that and just walk away. Okay. Or you can say, let's find a way in which we can minimize it and work around it. And I think there are various things that you can do to do that, but it's still there.
So in short, it takes a very special, tough, compassionate person to do this. But if you've got it all going for you, here is a perfect success story for you, and it works, and it can work, and it can do world-changing things. So I think we're out of time, Trevor, but I could talk to you all day, but thank you so much for the interview.
Thank you.
Hopefully everybody's going to come to you for their shea butter and can talk to you about their small contract manufacturing.
Yep.
And have a lot of success.
Thank you very much.
Grow it and grow it and grow it.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks.